stories you are about to see are real. The rewards up to $5 million are real. This is Crime Reports and Rewards with Griff Griffin and Dave Michaels, where you stay anonymous, the criminals don't. I'm Dave Michaels with this Crime Reports and Rewards special report. As we've been reporting World War III brewing in Syria, here's the latest updates.
The Russian president has given his first public reaction to RT on events surrounding Syria and its agreement to hand over chemical weapons stockpiles to the UN. We asked Vladimir Putin how the idea came about, and this is what he had to say.
It is well known that Syria possesses a chemical weapons arsenal, which they've always considered a counter to the nuclear weapons possessed by Israel. Russia's position is clear on this. We are against proliferation of both chemical and nuclear arms. In Syria, this is particularly important, and we discussed this issue with President Obama at the G20 summit. This question was also frequently discussed by other politicians and experts about putting these chemical weapons under international control. We've agreed to step up our efforts and ask the U.S. Secretary of State to work with the Russian Foreign Minister and move this forward. On September the 9th, we heard John Kerry's statement. He said it's an important issue which needs to be dealt with, and we agree. Syria's foreign minister is in Russia right now, and Sergei Lavrov talked to him, and the Syrian side reacted positively to that proposal. We now hope that our Syrian colleagues will make an important decision and put their chemical arms under control, agreeing to have them destroyed and join the Chemical Weapons Non-Proliferation Treaty. All of this could become an important step to resolving the Syrian crisis, but it can only work if the US and its allies agree not to use force against Syria. It's very difficult to force any country to disarm unilaterally when it knows it can fall under the threat of military action. We'll work together with our Syrian and U.S. partners, and we hope this will be a great step towards a peaceful solution to the crisis.
This may be a face-saving moment for the Obama administration because its arguments for a military action against Syria have been falling apart, both in the international community and in the U.S. Congress. Congress jumped on this Russian proposal because they're being bombarded every day by their constituents who demand that they vote no to strikes against Syria within hours after Syria confirmed its willingness to get rid of chemical weapons. The Senate delayed the vote on strikes that was scheduled for later this week. The president, knowing that the House of Representatives would most likely vote no on attacking Syria, was very vague about the prospect of the vote. He said this:
I don't anticipate that you would see a succession of votes this week or anytime in the immediate future. And so I think there will be time during the course of the debates here in the United States for the international community, the Russians and the Syrians, to work with us to see is there a way to resolve this.
The Obama administration's rhetoric has been confusing and has raised lots of questions as it was building the case for strikes. The U.S. wanted the support of the UN, but would refuse to take classified evidence that Washington supposedly has against the Syrian leader to the UN Security Council. Also, to U.S. lawmakers, Secretary of State John Kerry would make arguments like, if Congress does not support strikes in Syria, U.S. allies Saudi Arabia and Qatar, according to John Kerry, would certainly fund the more extremist elements of the Syrian opposition. Of course, many asked, what kind of an argument is that? Why are they even your allies if you admit that they're willing to fund terrorists? We're almost used to this. One day, President Obama says he has made his final decision on strikes. The next day, he says he has not made his final decision. At a time when he has confused virtually everybody in the international community and among the American people, and nobody knows where he's standing right now.
A top story than so many twists and turns today. Syria has agreed to Russia's proposal that it put its chemical weapon stockpiles under international control. Now, earlier in the day, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry had initially suggested such a scheme as a way to avoid a military strike on Syria. But then the U.S. State Department since issued an apparent retraction of that, saying it wasn't a genuine offer. RT's Sean Thomas is on top of this story. Hi, Sean. As I say, so many twists and turns, but since that initial offer was made, there's been so much positive reaction to it too. Take us through the day. Certainly, it has been a very interesting day watching this as it has developed. It started off as a day of a meeting of the ministers, both from the Western side and with Russia and the Syrian foreign minister. In fact, they met earlier today. That is Walid al-Muallim and Sergei Lavrov. Coming out of that meeting, they both agreed that Syria would work with Russia to stop a strike from the West, and also Syria had agreed to come to the negotiating table with no conditions. That's big news. But the biggest news is that Syria has agreed to release their chemical weapons arsenal to the international community. Let's listen to what Walid al-Muallim had to say about that.
I have listened to the Russian foreign minister's statement, and I want to say that we welcome his initiative as our government cares about the lives of the Syrian people and our national security, and also because we trust the Russian government's judgment in its efforts to prevent US aggression against the Syrian people.
Now let's backtrack and see how we got to this exact point. It started off with John Kerry meeting with his counterpart in the UK, William Hague, in London. Out of that meeting, Kerry said that Syria, if they want to avoid an attack from the US, they could turn over their entire chemical weapons arsenal by the end of this week. He also talked about if there were going to be a strike from the United States, it would be of limited scope and unbelievably small, saying that the United States is not going to go to war over the Syrian situation. This could be a play on words because only Congress has the ability to declare war. Congress is voting on Syrian intervention this week, so this could be a setup to basically say that Obama has the right to go it alone, if you will, without congressional approval. But out of that, Sergei Lavrov then came out and said he welcomes this idea. He's willing to work with the United States and the Syrian government to make this idea a reality. Let's listen to what Sergei Lavrov's words were in regards to this offer from Kerry.
We saw that statement by John Kerry, who said there would be no strikes if Damascus hands over its chemical weapons arsenal to the international community. We don't know whether Syria would agree to it, but if that helps avoid a strike, then we're ready to negotiate with Damascus.
Now, this is where this all gets really interesting. In fact, the State Department kind of issued a backtrack, if you will, stating that John Kerry's remarks were tongue-in-cheek. It was a rhetorical remark in response to the unbelievable idea that Bashar al-Assad would give up his chemical arsenal, an arsenal that he won't even admit to having. But after that retraction and after the idea came forward and after Sergei Lavrov said that he's willing to work with the U.S. and with the Syrian government, lots of international support. In fact, UK's Prime Minister Cameron saying that it is a big step forward. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon says he agrees with this concept, was considering a similar proposal from the UN as well, and then also urging Syria to join the chemical weapons ban. And then, of course, this latest news that the Syrian government itself, the Syrian Prime Minister, agreeing that they are willing to work with Russia and the West to remove their chemical arsenal to avoid a strike from the West. So big news developing tonight on the Syrian front.
While in an effort to avoid World War III, Syria may agree to turn over whatever chemical weapons they have. We all know it was not the Syrian government that carried out the attack, but in fact the Syrian rebels, as you can see from the video footage on your screen now. And here's further proof.
A bombshell article by Associated Press correspondent Dale Gavlak, who also worked for NPR and writes for the BBC, reveals that the rebels have admitted that they were responsible for the casualties as a result of that chemical weapons attack last week. And the question is, will the mainstream media bury what could be a story that may derail this march to war? Now, here's my version of the story at Infowars.com, and here's the original at Mint Press News by Associated Press correspondent Dale Gavlak. So she visited the areas around Damascus, Ghouta, where this chemical weapons incident took place. She spoke to the militants, to the rebels involved in fighting in that area, who told her that they were given chemical weapons by Saudi Arabia, specifically by Prince Bandar bin Sultan, who is the intelligence chief, the Saudi intelligence chief, he ordered the delivery of weapons via a Saudi militant to these Syrian rebels in Ghouta. They were initially intended to be given to Jabhat al-Nusra, which of course is the Al-Qaeda group that's fighting, that's commanding the Syrian rebels who have pledged allegiance to Jabhat al-Nusra, who in turn pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda. So the Saudis delivered the weapons, or intended to deliver the weapons, to Jabhat al-Nusra. They got into the hands of the actual lower level rebels who had no training on how to handle these deadly chemical weapons. There was an accident, an explosion, and that caused all the horrific casualties that you saw in the YouTube videos last week. That's what Associated Press correspondent, 20-year veteran in the Middle East, NPR BBC writer Dale Gavlak says Syrian rebels told her in this bombshell article. And as one of the rebels told her, quote, "We were very curious about these arms, and unfortunately some of the fighters handled the weapons improperly and set off the explosions." Another female fighter named Kay also told Gavlak, "They didn't tell us what these arms were or how to use them. We didn't know they were chemical weapons. We never imagined they were chemical weapons." Then she quotes Abu Abdel Monim, a father of one of the rebels, who said, "My son came to me 2 weeks ago asking what I thought the weapons were that he had been asked to carry, describing them as having a tube-like structure while others were like a huge gas bottle." And he names the Saudi militant who provided the weapons as Abu Ashaya. And according to Monheim, this father of one of the rebels, the weapons, improperly handled, exploded inside a tunnel, killing 12 of the rebels instantly, and then causing the wider chemical weapons incident, which of course injured and killed hundreds of people, as you saw in the videos. But this story is bombshell. The rebels have basically accepted responsibility for causing an attack which is being blamed on the Syrian president by the Obama administration as a precursor to Tomahawk cruise missile attacks, which could start a massive war in the Middle East. It's based on completely false pretenses. If this story is accurate, we don't know. Absolute bombshell claims, and what makes it all the more credible is Dale Gavlak. Here's a picture of her. 20-year veteran Middle Eastern correspondent for the Associated Press. She's written for Salon, she's written for BBC, she's done work for NPR. Completely credible. This is not some random blogger that's made up some claims. She's a credible journalist. She went to the areas affected. She talked to the militants who admitted being behind the chemical weapons attack. Syrian rebels admit they were behind the chemical weapons attack. Will the media cover this bombshell story? This is Paul Joseph Watson reporting for Infowars.com.
We have reports that the rebel forces are planning to launch another false flag against Israel and blame it on the Syrian government.
A number of anonymous sources close to the Syrian conflict have told RT that rebel forces are planning to launch a, quote, provocation attack using chemical weapons against Israel. Live now to RT's Paul Islier in Tel Aviv. For more on this, obviously those concerns that are uncorroborated, but let's talk about where they may have come from and how strong they may be, those concerns being greeted very seriously in Israel.
Well, it certainly will be taken very seriously here in Israel. Nothing as of yet in the Israeli press or any kind of official comments. What we know is that RT sources are telling us that they have information that in the nearest future there will be an attack originating in the areas of Syria where the rebels are present using certain unknown chemical weapons against the territory of Israel. Now, there are two important points I want to make. The first is that we are being told that these attacks will originate in territory that is being controlled by the Assad government. So what this clearly means is that the blame will go towards the Syrian regime. But on the other hand, it will be attacks that will be carried out by the Syrian rebels. As I say, no reaction as of yet here in Israel, but in the last 24 hours, there have been a number of emergency drills, particularly in the north of the country, in Israel's Golan Heights. We also are hearing now from the Israeli Institute for Policy Against Terrorism. On Monday, they released a report in which they say that they have information that there are chemical weapons in Syria being housed in some 50 cities 5 of those are cities with big factories. Now, the report is saying that the situation in these cities is constantly changing. So what this means is that sometimes the rebels are in charge, sometimes Assad's forces, and the conclusion is that there is the possibility that the rebel fighters will be in control of these weapons if and when these cities fall to their hands. The report also outlines concerns that Hezbollah or Palestinian organizations or Al-Qaeda-linked organizations will get their hands on these chemical weapons. Israel, of course, is very, very concerned about any kind of attacks on Israeli territory that will emanate from Syria. In the past, it has struck Syria, at the time it said, to prevent weapon delivery to Hezbollah. Of course, it's common knowledge in Israel and elsewhere that this country benefits from Assad being in power. Otherwise, Israel would have to face a whole host of characters who ultimately are going to be worse than Assad himself. Although officially the Israeli point of view is that it is not involved inside Syria. But speaking to people here inside Israel, the Israeli point of view by and large is that the lesser evil is for Israel to coexist with the Assad regime. And of course, this is something that Israel has been doing for a few years. The alleged use of chemical weapons by the rebels is not something new. We've seen these allegations coming forward in the past. Of course, this is a conflict that has been laden with all kinds of provocations at all levels. We've seen horrifying pictures of dead children that were used by the Obama administration to justify a possible attack on Syria. And later it turned out that those children had in fact been kidnapped and slaughtered by the rebels with chemical weapons. Israel, of course, will take very seriously these latest claims that rebels are planning a major provocation to strike Israel from the territory currently being controlled by the Syrian government.
I'm Dave Michaels with this week's edition of Spot Crime, where we highlight crimes reported in the CSRA. We've had 36 assaults around the CSRA. They took place on the 1700 block of East Valley Park, the 2400 block of Belgrade Court, the 3600 block of Larkspur Drive, the 2900 block of Foxhall Court, the 2800 block of Wiles Road, the 3200 block of Alpine Road, the 100 block of 4th Street, the 2500 block of Smoke Tree Road, the 2400 block of Penny Hill Drive, the 1400 block of Stovall Street, 3000 block of Deansbridge Road, the 2800 block of Peasant Drive, the 1300 block of Colkin Avenue, the 900 block of Walton Way, the 600 block of 11th Street, the 2400 block of Providence Place, the 1600 block of McCalkey Street, the 1600 block of Hunter Street, 1100 block of Union Cemetery Road, the 400 block of Hell Street, the 1000 block of 10th Avenue, the 2400 block of Dublin Drive, the 2100 block of Kelly Street, the 200 block of Ferglow Street, the 1600 block of Gordon Highway, the 3300 block of Tanglewood Drive, the 2900 block of Rays Creek Drive, the 1600 block of Curon Way, the 2600 block of Willis Foreman Road, the 4200 block of James Drive, the 1600 block of the Gordon Highway, the 900 block of 11th Avenue, the 1900 block of 3rd Avenue, the 1000 block of River Ridge Drive, 1900 block of Katrina Drive, and the 2600 block of Lumpkin Road. We've had 21 burglaries around the CSRA. They took place at the 1800 block of Eagle Road, the 1100 block of Laney Walker Boulevard, the 1900 block of Windsor Springs Road, the 3300 block of Emerson Drive, the 3500 block of Jonathan Circle, the 3800 block of Craigington Place, the 2700 block of Hunts Cliff Drive, the 700 block of Bennock Mill Road, the 2600 block of Eric Drive, the 2500 block of Weldon Drive, the 1800 block of Wiles Road, the 200 block of Boy Scout Road, the 1400 block of Reynolds Street, the 3400 block of Princess Avenue, the 2300 block of Barton Chapel Road, the 1300 block of Anderson Avenue, the 4100 block of Country Lane, the 2300 block of Milledgeville Road, the 2300 block of Travis Road, the 2600 block of Peach Orchard Road, and the 2500 block of St. Sebastian Court. We've had 5 robberies around the CSRA. They took place on the 900 block of Broad Street, 10th Street, the 1800 block of Laney Walker Boulevard, the 3400 block of Pine Hill Road, and the 3000 block of Washington Road. We've had 1 case of arson. It took place on the 1100 block of Gordon Street, and 1 drug arrest. It took place at the 1300 block of Walton Way. If you know anything about these crimes or any other crimes, please text your tips to 803-441-8744, where you'll always remain anonymous, and you tell us where to stack your cash rewards.
On Monday, September 2nd, at approximately 05:32 hours, the Richmond County Sheriff's Office responded to an alarm activation at Ethan Food Store, located at 2940A Inwood Drive. Upon deputies' arrival, it was learned that an unknown person forced his way into the rear of the business by making a large hole in the wall, approximately 5 feet wide and about 4 feet high. Numerous cartons of cigarettes were stolen. Attached are still photos of the suspect. The Richmond County Sheriff's Office is asking the public's assistance in identifying the male pictured in the still photos. Anyone with information leading to the positive identification of this black male pictured is asked to please call Sergeant Michael McDaniel of the Richmond County Sheriff's Office or any other investigator at 706-821-1080. or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS, or email your tips to tips@AugustaCrimeStoppers.org, where you can remain anonymous and get a cash reward. Local police, Patriot Guards like the ones you saw waving from overpasses, Crime Stoppers, and all area bikers need you to keep a lookout for this one-of-a-kind stolen Road Glide Harley. It was stolen sometime last week while the owner was out of town. If you think you've seen it or know how police may find it, please call any law enforcement agency. If anyone gives a tip to Crime Stoppers that results in this bike being returned to its owner, they can receive a reward up to $1,000. Call 1-800-222-TIPS or email your tip to tips@AugustaCrimeStoppers.org, where you can remain anonymous and get paid.
I'm Dave Michaels with this Crime Reports and Rewards special report. While 90% of the Americans support the Second Amendment, the gun-grabbing legislatures continually try to take our guns away. Well, the gun grabbers who dealt a serious blow this week. Here's Leanne McAdoo.
In a devastating blow to gun control advocates, Colorado recalled 2 high-profile senators Tuesday night in what is shaping up to be a referendum on the state's recently passed gun control laws. The recall included the Democratic president of the Senate, incumbent John Morse, along with Democratic State Senator Angela Giron, who both backed gun control measures. The firearms legislation they supported included size limits for magazines and expanded background checks for private and online gun purchases. And although Giron represents a mostly Democratic working-class district, Democrats there are big supporters of the Second Amendment. Recall organizer Timothy Knight said voters were upset that Colorado's Democrat-majority legislature seemed more inclined to take its cues from the White House than its constituents. The gun laws passed this year with no Republican support. Knight said if the people had been listened to, these recalls wouldn't be happening. Colorado is one of 19 states where voters can recall their elected officials without having to prove any evidence of fraud or misconduct in order to gather the signatures that are necessary to schedule a special vote. The recall elections were the first ever for the state since they adopted the procedure in 1912. Out-of-state contributions flooded in for both parties, with Bloomberg and the NRA each contributing more than $300,000. These contributions from Mayor Bloomberg of New York and other liberals from Washington and California raised suspicions from Colorado voters who said it's our election, not DC's, not New York. The reported $3 million in donations from Morse and Giron dwarfed the amount raised by gun activists. But in the end, it was a recall majority actually showing up to vote that prevailed. An NRA spokesman said Colorado voters sent a clear message that their Second Amendment rights are not for sale. Tuesday's recall could be seen as a clear warning to other lawmakers who are thinking about supporting tighter gun control laws, and that is that your vote could have swift consequences.
The Columbia County Sheriff's Office is looking for this iPhone thief. This suspect took a lady's iPhone 5 that her son had left on the counter at the Circle K on Baston Road in Martinez. The theft occurred August 18th when the 20-year-old victim put his mother's iPhone on the counter and turned to talk to a friend. He left the store without the phone, and it was missing when he returned. The young man's mother called the iPhone, but the call was immediately disconnected. Although the iPhone had a location app, she was unable to locate the phone using her location app, which means the phone may have been disabled. The theft of a smartphone has been known to wipe out jobs and seriously affect businesses because many now run their operations with smartphones. So it may not be so much the value of the iPhone as the value of the information on the iPhone that matters. If you know where this chunky black male iPhone thief is, please call Captain Steve Morris of the Columbia County Sheriff's Office at 706-541-2800 or Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS or email your tip to tips@AugustaCrimeStoppers.org where you can remain anonymous and get paid.
You've been watching Crime Reports and Rewards with Griff Griffin and Dave Michaels, where you stay anonymous. The criminals don't. If you have any information on these or any other crimes, call our national tip line at 1-800-222-TIPS. Well, you'll stay anonymous and could get a cash reward. You can see this or any other episode of Crime Reports and Rewards on the web anytime at crimereportsandrewards.com. Crime Reports and Rewards is a production of Michaels Media.